fine afternoon.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, Philip.
Item 1 is apologies. Dalby, do I have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Phil. It's members' apologies. Faye Pedfield, Michael Moran, Mary Ann Burrows, Anthony Dix, Nick Evans, Jane Burrows. That's from members. And also we welcome Matthew Bowen. He has taken a secondment position within SEND as a part of the SEND and Inclusion Charge Programme. We wish him well in his new role. His interim replacement, Caroline Newell, will be attending and voting on the school's behalf for this meeting. And apologies from officers and councillors is Councillor Jeff Morgan, Ian Budd and Chris Baird. Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you very much. We accept those apologies. Right. Item 2 is voting and actions from the last meeting. They have all been, it's been circulated with the documents. We're all happy with those, that record. Everybody's had the chance to look at the video if they want to. I should perhaps mention to members and officers that I believe we do have an observer with us today, who will be observing the meeting, and welcome them. Larry, did you want to say something, please?
Sorry to interrupt, Phil. There's a gentleman called Joss Andrews asking somebody could send him the link for the meeting.
I'm just sending the papers to him now. Thank you for raising it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, item 3. Are there any matters arising from last time's minutes? Steph, are you taking this?
Hi, Phil. In Steph's absence, I'm happy to take this.
Okay, all right, sorry.
It's just a really short item, actually, and it's just in relation to a couple of matters arising that came from the September meeting, so a little while back, but they've been pushed back. So I just wanted to explain where we were. There was just 2 items. The first one was a request that the outcome of the review of any SEND services that trade with schools were brought to Schools Forum. I can just give a short update on that says basically the review is still ongoing. And once it's concluded, that the outcome of that review will be shared with Schools Forum. The other item is an update on children in special schools was also requested. Rather than provide an update specifically around children in special schools, as I understand it, we do expect that they will feature in the regular DSG recovery plan updates that Ross and Wade provide. So I'm hoping that covers both of those items from matters arising.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay. Right, item 4 is the dedicated schools grant budget for 2022 and 23, which has been presented by Brian Smith. And we've got, this is a matter for decision, so that we are asked to note the budget and approve it. And I'll ask Brian to present the report, please.
Thanks, Phil. You've just done my introduction for me about the recommendations. You can take over the whole report if you want.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Okay. Right. The as Phil said, the Schools Forum has 2 recommendations. One is to note the DSG for the schools, the high needs and early years blocks, but also to approve the DSG budget allocation for the smaller central schools block budget. Okay, so the table on paragraph 1 is basically a reminder of what the budget and the changes have happened since last time we did the allocations in December. and the effect of what's of the non-domestic rates coming out, and also the provisional recoupment out of the high needs block, giving a total budget to be allocated of just over 500 million, £500 million. Okay. The page 2 now, the schools block. This is just a reminder really of the decisions taken by Schools Forum late last year about the delegation. All that's been fed into the process. Okay, all that's been fed into the process, so that's just a reminder really. Page 3, that's really just showing the detailed allocation of the schools block. See that the vast majority of it goes through the school's ISB, and then the various elements. We've applied the full national funding formula in full, leaving about 0.8 million unallocated. This with the use of the just over the 1070 million reserves, equals the amount that's as approved by the Schools Forum for the slightly under 0.5% movement from the schools block to the high needs block. Okay. I'll go on to the high needs block now. Again, this is the allocations. You can see that the vast majority of it goes to either the direct to the school send places for settings or through the top ups. So that's roughly 75% of the high needs block goes to those places. Okay. The other large amount is the 8.6 million, 8.7 million on the post-16 funding line, which is about 9 rows down top. So that's the high needs block sorted. What it is showing at the moment is that we will still be forecasting a shortfall in 22-23 of the 3.116 million. That adds up to the deficits we've had since 2019-20. So our forecasted deficit will be just over 21 million by the, our forecasted overdrawn reserve will be just over 20 million by the end of 22-23. Next, page 5, I'll go into the early years block. This just shows the allocations for the year. You'll see that the vast majority of it goes to providers, 18.6 million for the universal funding, and just over 8 million for the additional 15 hours. Then you've got the 2.9, almost 3 million goes for the 2-year-old funding. We've kept within the 5%, lower than 5%, the amount that we keep back for central services, which are the lower services below the near the bottom of the table. Okay. Now this is the central schools block. This is the one which excuse me, schools will schools will have to, Schools Forum will vote on. This shows where we've allocated the funding and by using some of the reserves. That's 320,000 near the bottom, the very last bottom figure. That will fully allocate the budget. We'll use some prudent use of reserves, and we've also managed to wangle 185,000 extra from the DFE for the historic commitments. So we've been able to maintain those. That is all in the main part of the report, and then really it's just up to the voting now. But before that, are there any questions?
I think it's worth noting that for members that there was obviously an issue on bottom of page 6 on item 5.3 about the Central Schools block, and Brian has provided a very effective argument on our behalf to the government, so that we've actually got that additional £185,000 to fund the CSSB for another year. And I understand that we have to bat for that every year, but well done, Brian, for that so far. The other question I was going to ask was the issue about the non-domestic rates now not being in school budgets. I assume that's a national thing, is it?
Yeah, it's a national thing. They basically we have to provide all the names of all the authorities that actually do the charging for domestic rates, and the DfE deal with them directly.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's not it makes any difference, because in terms of school budgets, it's always gone straight through, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
I think the only comment I would make is going back to page 1, table 1.1, and looking at those increases. They look fairly healthy until what's happened in the last couple of months in terms of the way that inflation's taken off. And certainly I sat in a school budget meeting last week where we were making some really good finger in the air predictions about what we're going to do about energy over the next 2 or 3 years, and people were getting very nervous about it. And we did actually still manage to make it balanced, but I think there's going to be some schools going to have some very tight conversations about budgets in terms of what they're forecasting for energy. Paul Gillett, please.
Hi, I take it you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can indeed, yes.
Right, okay.
Can you hear us?
Procedural thing, when it comes to voting as the union representative, do I take part in the vote, or am I more like an observer? Because this is my first year, and so I just wanted to ask whether I'm involved with the voting or not.
I believe you're an observer.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to be rude and be seen to be not taking part if
not at all
I was supposed to be taking part. Okay, all right, thank you for answering the question.
Thanks for that, Paul. Are there any other comments or questions, please? Okay then, we are being asked to approve this budget for the Central School Services block, as in table 6. So all those in favour of that, please show by the normal method. Okay, I'll make that. Here we go. Are we all finished voting? Some hands going up and down. I'll make that 13. If you'd like to take your hands down. Are there any against that proposal? Paul, you've still got your hand up. I guess that's an accident, isn't it? Thank you. Right, okay, that seems to be carried.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing, Phil? With that approval, it'll obviously help our discussions with the DfE next year about maintaining the historic commitment amount as well.
Yeah.
So thank you to all the voting members who approved that.
Okay. Right. Item 5 is the election process and timetable. Believe it or not, we are at the end of our 2-year cycle of elections to school forum, and so we're up for election this spring, and the new schools forum will meet for the first time next meeting on the 23rd of June. So Pamina, if you'd like to take us through that election process and timetable, please.
Will do. Thank you, Phil. I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see the report for those that don't have it on
Yep.
screen themselves? Okay, great. So I'll come back to the recommendations towards the end. I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. So the ESFA does issue guidance on how the election process should work for Schools Forum. So the key requirements really are that all types of schools need to be represented on Schools Forum, that members together must number at least 2/3 of the total membership, schools and academy members. There needs to be some kind of proportionate split between those representing primary and academy, and also academy and maintained. And the forum should have a representative from the 16 to 19 providers, the PVI sector, before consideration of other groups. They need to consider diocese as well. In terms of Schools Forum terms of reference and how it's administered, membership from maintained schools and academies would, as far as possible, be split between heads and governors. Doesn't have to be a 50-50 split, that is the ideal, but as long as there is a split, that's what we're aiming for. And the term of membership will be 2 years. Table 2 just gives an indication of our current Schools Forum membership, and you'll see that actually it does look quite primary maintained heavy. And that is because this time last year, when we carried out the nominations and the elections process, we didn't have anything come through from primary academy members, so we adjusted primary maintained accordingly. We're going to try and cast our net a little wider this time and see if we can reach academy primary schools through our nomination process. Table 3 shows the proposed schools membership, and you'll see that really we've tried to do that proportionately across primary maintained, secondary maintained, primary academy and secondary academy based on pupil numbers. So this is the ideal. The numbers of School Forum reps, of which would be heads or their representatives or governors. You'll see the 3 columns on the right hand side give what we're looking for in an ideal world. Obviously it depends what comes through the nominations process. Very recent guidance, well, this time last year from the ESFA, actually states that academy representation no longer needs to be sector specific through primary and secondary, but actually if academies can consider it when voting, that would be helpful. Section 4 then just details the non-schools membership and the number of representations that we are proposing to identify, and then the election timetable. We're looking to send out the forms, the nomination forms, to all schools maintained an academy by the 24th of March, so that's a week tomorrow. By Friday the 13th of May, we would be seeking all submissions of nominations, please, and then we will then take all of that into account, and if we need to elect, we will then send election forms out to everybody by Friday the 20th of May. When we did this a couple of years ago, there was actually no need to elect because we only just about had sufficient numbers of nominations, so that will depend on the nominations that we get through. On the assumption that there are some elections, we would like the deadline for that to close on Friday the 27th of May, just before half term, which gives us half term to go through them all and then announce the membership not long after half term. And then the new Schools Forum meet with all new members will be on the 24th of June. What we will do is we will include that date and other future Schools Forum dates in the nominations documentation that we send out, so people that are keen to become members of Schools Forum can have those dates in their diary. We propose that, in line with what we've done in other years and what a lot of other local authorities do, is that if academies are happy for us to do the administration of the nomination process and the voting process, we at the County Council are happy to do that for you. We also proposed a new terms of reference, which are attached in Appendix A. I'll come back to that when I go through the recommendations. There's the reference to Appendix B, which actually isn't attached, but I can show that on screen when we go through the recommendations as well. The first 2 items in the June meeting will be the election of the chair and the vice chair, just to make everybody aware. And then finally, if we do get 27 of School Forum members through this process, to be quorate, we will need 2/5 of the voting membership, which would mean 11 going forward. So if I just scroll back up to the recommendations, actually, before I do that, has anybody got any questions on the process or the dates? Okay, I'll just go through recommendations.
Silence, I think.
Yeah. I'll just go through the recommendations. So I'd appreciate that you agree the proposed schools forum membership as set out in paragraph 3.1. Should we do them in turn, Phil? Would that be best?
Well, I don't think there's much controversy there, Pamina. I was going to say, unless anyone objects, I'm going to, and there haven't been any questions, I was going to move the recommendations en bloc.
Okay, that works for me.
Everybody happy with that? Do you just want to go through your Appendix A and B first before we go through that?
Okay, lovely. Yeah, I will do. So I'll switch over here. So this is the terms of reference that have been updated. I've tried to make life easy for everybody and highlighted any changes in purple. They're very nominal changes, really. So we're just proposing that every March forum meeting, we review the terms of reference, and membership details will be updated following the election process, which will be every 2 years. There was just a couple of other minor changes regarding the clerk to the forum that has now changed to the senior accountant or their representative. And then the last thing, Phil, was in fact, that was it. I can't see any other purple. Oh, yes, there it is. It's the election of the chair and the vice chair. So we're proposing that they serve for either 1 or 2 year period to be confirmed at the point that they are elected. Those were the changes to the terms of reference. And then the document that wasn't included in the papers, apologies for that, is the school forum powers and responsibilities. So we propose that we send this out when we send the nomination forms. And it's just a document, it can actually easily be accessed online, which just details the various responsibilities of the local authority, the schools forum and the DFE.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments, please? Yes, it's Martin Davis, isn't it?
Yes, you probably can't see me because my camera's going strange, but that's probably a merciful release rather than anything else. I was going to say, firstly, I'm not standing again, but I will encourage any people I know who seem to have the expertise and interest to put themselves forward. And I'd like to say how valuable I found the membership of the forum, with the high quality of debate and argument. And indeed, although I wasn't at the last meeting, echoed what's in the minutes about Neil's enormous contribution, his lucidity, his ability to explain really very complex issues and to respond to difficult questions.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for your service. We've appreciated your contributions that you've made to this meeting. Okay, so if everyone's happy, I am going to move those 5 recommendations en bloc. So if you indicate your support in the usual way, please. Okay, I have everyone finished voting?
Yeah.
Okay, I have 14 votes for. If you'd like to lower your hands. Is that all the voting members?
Yes, it was. Thanks, Phil.
Right, thank you. Right, thank you for that. So item 6 is the scheme for financing of school updates. Sorry, scheme for financing of schools, updates and amendments. Brian Smith, please.
I'll share my screen for this one, okay?
Yeah. So this is maintained schools only, Brian, yeah?
Yes, maintained schools only. This is the formal document outlining the relationship between maintained schools and the local authority. Every time something gets updated nationally, we update this, and we've also done a bit of a desktop cleanup exercise on it this time round for some of the to make it more literate and to remove references to anything that's gone that's been removed from our relationship. Most of them are minor issues. We've put the actual document is in the appendix. to this report, and it's been, all the changes have been highlighted in purple in that document. The report, this report itself has the one issue really is about the paragraph 1.4. It's about the Schools Forum agreeing the consultation period with schools, and actually agreeing or agreeing with the changes we've made, so that we can then forward it for consultation to schools. I'll go into the actual changes itself on page 2. One of them's a very, how can I put it, accountancy geeky issue to do with IRF 16, IRFS 16, sorry. And this just changes, reflects the latest published information from the DFE. It has been put back a year. Now it doesn't start until 2022. It was due to be for the year 21-22. Mentioned the desktop review. These are the listing, what we've done with them. Mostly just minor typing issues, changes in wording. So they're all reflected in that, and we've put the updated references to Treasury Management as well at the end. As I said, we aligned this document. This is a document that we've had to do since the start of delegated budgets to schools. So it's a long lasting document that we update, and we tend to try and keep it into the same as the DFE guidance as well. Really, that's it, Phil. I think, unless anyone's got specific questions.
I've got some questions, I think. Larry Granelli, please.
Okay.
Sorry, Phil, I forgot to take my hand down.
Okay. Martin Davies.
No, my hand's down, as far as I know.
All right, okay. It's still showing, but Rose Gunn, please.
Again, I thought my hand was down. So sorry.
That's all right. I thought we're going to have some questions and comments there.
I've got no questions about IRFS 16.
I wonder why. Okay. Any questions or comments on this document, please? Brian's report. Okay. Right. We have 2 recommendations there. We are recommended to agree the revised scheme for financing of schools, which reflects the DFE's statutory guidance, and also agree the timetable for consultation on changes with maintained schools. And again, with your permission, unless anyone disagrees, I'm going to take those 2 recommendations together just for ease. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Just a reminder, this is just maintained schools only.
Maintained schools only, please. Yeah. Okay. So if you'd like to show your indicate your approval in the usual way. Okay, that's 8.
Yeah.
Anyone against? Okay, that appears to be carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so the next items are for information and comment, and the next one is item 7, which is the DSG monitoring report, and we're working Brian hard again. So he's on. This is your report again, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. You can still see the document on screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah. This is the outturn forecast for 21-22 for the whole of the DSG forecast position. This was as at period 10, which is basically the end of January. It takes the usual format of all the monitoring reports you've seen during the year already. So I'll go into table 1, which is at the bottom of at the top of page 2, and that's just showing the latest allocations of the DSG, changes for recoupment, and some early years block changes that have come through due to the October census data. So after recoupment, we're looking at £240 million that we're forecasting against. Okay. The table in table 2, paragraph 2.1, that's very simply showing the forecasts variances by each of the blocks. So as you see, overall, the DSG is 2.44 million. It's forecasted to be 2.44 million overspent. That's with a high needs block overspend of just over 4 million, offset by underspends on the schools block, early years block, and the central school services block. That 2.44 million overspend is within the 1% that's the DfE insists we have a recovery plan for, but we obviously have a recovery plan anyway for the high needs block part of it. So we're within that threshold for the whole of the DSG. The paragraph, top of page 3, the reserve position, that's just showing after the effect of outturn, the 2.44 million, this is what the reserves will be like at the end of on the 31st of March this year, forecasted. So it shows we've got central services block. Again, we've said in the previous report that I showed on the budget for 22-23, we're going to draw 320,000 of that down. Similar with the schools block, and then it's got the high needs block. That 17,944 plus the forecasted deficit for 22-23 equals the 20 million that I talked about in the previous report for the overdrawn reserve at the end of 22-23. Okay. Right. Paragraph 4 onwards just goes into the a bit more detail about each of the blocks and the major areas of the overspends. So for the schools block, the major underspend is on the growth funding, which will be put back into reserves, and then we've got it. That's helped to fund the movement of the transfer of funding from the schools block to the high needs block in 22-23. There are a few other minor underspends there. Okay. Now the high needs block, that's obviously the area of major concern with a 4.1 million forecasted overspend. This has reduced during the year, but it's still a significant overspend, and that's what we have the overall planning, with the 5.2 million deficit in 1920 and the 8 million in 2021. Following paragraph 4.3 onwards is really highlighting the areas of major overspends. Obviously, those are to do with ISP, independent special provision, the 3.6 million. They are the major area. That's the major area. There's a table in there. We've started to compile some real from the Send Inclusion Change program. We've got better better control of some of the data that's come through. So we're able now to really have confidence in some of the activity we have, and also the average unit cost and how that changes from when we set the budget throughout the year and how things have changed. So we'll be continuing to have that. We may not show it in as much detail in the future, but we just thought we present it in this way for the moment. And if we go down this section is the offsetting of the major overspends, and this is the underspends. So we've got some on top up funding to both mainstream and special schools. They're the major ones, and also alternative provision. Some of these are sort of in line or slight slippage on the change program, but it will flow through as the change program takes hold, and we'll see those budgets being used up as the overspends on the areas that we want to change in the SEND Inclusion Change program will start to bite there. So we'll hopefully have the underspends spent up and the overspends come down, if you get what I mean. Okay. The early years block, no major variances. The only one is lower numbers of nursery pupils, just over 100,000. The one issue with this block is that it is the only block that does get changed after the year end, the allocation of budget, because they do a recheck of the census in 2022, and they'll adjust later in the year. It's normally July. Last year it was November, so we just don't know what time scale they're working to at the moment. And then the central schools block, the only major underspend on that is a 261, which was being held really as knowing that our historic funding was the historic funding was going to be reduced. We luckily didn't get it reduced as much in the end, but that's the position that we're at the moment. That again will go into the reserve, and as I said, we'll draw down 320,000 next year to balance the budget. I've whisked through that. I know pages 7 onwards is the appendix, and that really is the detail. That's basically how Dwayne and other service managers manage the budget within education. So there's 4 pages of the detail of each block. Coming down to the bottom, which is the reported overspend of 2.444 million. We'll just go back to the top. So really, yes, it's just for you to note this report. Are there any questions? I'll try and deal with them, and if not, I'll pass on to Steph, who may have the detailed issues about.
Brian, in terms of that growth funding, I mean that's a deferral, isn't it? It's going to get spent at some point. Yes. Is there any concern in the authority that, given that we're moving into a higher inflation environment, and certainly in the costs of construction and stuff, that growth funding may not be enough in the end?
Well, I mean, that's mostly to do with revenue funding rather than the capital funding.
Yeah, of course.
So there is a big worry in the authority about the capital side of things and the increased cost, as there is about the revenue on some of the items you mentioned earlier on fuel and energy prices, especially energy prices. So yeah, it's been closely monitored, and we've got to see how things go. We seem to be going from one pressure point to another, or world issue to another at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Rebecca Harrison, please.
Hi, on the early years block, I've got a feeling there was some reserves or carry forward from the previous years that we were thinking of putting back into early years. I just don't know if that's been noted anywhere.
Yes,
just making sure that we're getting it, because we're desperate for it.
If you say you're getting it, a paper will be going. Well, the working group on the early years working group will meet to discuss the use of those reserves. So I can't, on that decision, what will happen? So
no, I am part of that group, but I was just checking that it is definitely happening
it's
and
on
that
the,
I didn't.
It is on the agenda. Yes, don't worry. It's probably top of that agenda.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any more comments or questions for Brian, please? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 8, which is the DSG recovery plan relating to the high needs block. Ross or Dwayne, which of you is leading on this?
Ross will.
Bill?
Yeah. Go on, Ross.
Thanks. And I have to admit, the PDF didn't open on mine, so I hope other people have been able to open that in their papers. I've obviously got the one that I wrote as a Word document as well. So I hope people have had a chance to see the report. Essentially, there are kind of two lists here. One is of our Send Inclusion Change Program activity. So we have our Send Inclusion Change Program of a number of projects which are seeking, as it sets out there, both to improve outcomes for our young people in Send, but also to achieve that financial sustainability, which has been which you've just seen from the monitoring report, that we still have significant overspend in that area. I'll come back to that in a moment. Essentially, you end up with two lists. One of some of the activity that's the late activity that's been going on in the Send Inclusion Change Program, and then almost the cumulative effect of that in terms of what that's led to in terms of the profile and how we are managing SEND across the county. I guess so some notable points down in 3.3. Key for us is we are opening the Warwickshire Academy, which is a new special school, particularly those with social, emotional, mental health needs, and that is opening. It's started to open actually from a couple of weeks ago. The young people on a transition to opening the Warwickshire Academy, which will ultimately have 80 new special school places available once it's full, and have a significant impact with bringing down that spend in our independent specialist sector. We're also doing the inclusion framework work in rugby, which is trying to work with mainstream schools to get in, to avoid our kind of trading barriers and say how can we support schools with a graduated response to avoid the need to go for a family to fall into crisis and more resources be used overall. I'll mention the top-up funding, which is what part of our overall strategy is to try and get more funding into mainstream schools and to place in our state special schools, which is why you saw in the previous report, although we've got underspends in those areas, our ambition is to actually spend more in mainstream, spend more in our state funded, and spend less in our independent specialist. So top-up funding trial is underway. It has been a bit slow in terms of actually delivering money to those schools. What we've heard back from schools so far is they like the allocation method that we've been using, but we need to actually release the funding. We're waiting on schools to submit some of their essentially kind of scorecards against the matrix to release some of that funding. We will be coming back to Schools Forum regarding that top-up funding, trying to make sure that both it's usable, which seems to be fairly which had a positive response so far, but also it's affordable as well, which we will monitor as we go forward with that. We'll also the capital strategy program is also looking for more, has identified where we need more resource provisions and where we need to expand special schools in the future as well. So that's all work within the Send Change program, which continues at a pace. In terms of the overall impact of that, you've just seen in the monitoring report, and this is the bit I always find very difficult to report to Schools Forum, to say we're £4 million overspent, but that it was worse last year. It was 8 million. We'd actually forecast 11 million. You know, I know it's not good news to say we're 4 million overspent, but it's better than where we thought we would be. In truth, where we are, the reasons for that are multiple. We have had more funding come in from government. We have had the movement in the schools block, which is significant. I think we feel we've also we've also kind of we've been managing it to keep it at a level. You'll see from some of the data, so our numbers in independent specialist provision are actually about on the same level that they were a year ago. So we're making sure it's not going up. As a proportion, it's coming down, but it's still, you know, on those raw numbers that is it's still quite high in terms of about 250 children. In independent specialist provision, you've seen the high amount of spend in the last item. We do have more children with EHC plans attending mainstream settings. We have more attending our state-funded specialist settings. We have more attending our resource provisions. It's also worth noting, and this can be a controversial area, we set out in our DSG recovery plan to slow the growth of in the number of EHC plans issued. So we expected them to continue to grow year on year, but wanted to slow the growth because we had seen that grow significantly. We actually issued less EHC plans last year in the calendar year than we did in the previous year, 492 compared with 583 in the previous year. I won't go into all the other points there. I will. I think I have said at the end of it, we need to have that long-term forecast come back to schools forum in terms of where we were, because when we originally started this out about 18 months ago, we gave the long-term forecast. That was where we said we thought would be 11 million overspent this year. We now know it's 4. We know what the different funding factors are coming into that. So I think it's appropriate that we I know Colin, who's been working with us, has done a lot of work on that and is almost ready to come back. So we should come back with that information to you as well, to give the long-term forecast, not just a kind of quarter by quarter. Happy to take any questions. Brian may want to come in, as I've just mentioned, some work that finance will support us with.
Yeah, I was just going to, on the point that Ross just said, yeah, we're sort of waiting because the 3 or 4 immediate things and lots of other things that affect the overall position of the DSG high needs block variance and overspend, is that we've sort of going to take a snapshot on the 31st of, in other words, after the year end finishes. So we've got that in place. That's fixed. We know where we are with that. We've got the funding for the moment, what funding is coming from the government. So we're trying to get it at probably the best point in the year where we can fix it and show you the position that we therefore know of. So that's really why we haven't brought anything specific at this time. It'll be once year end is out of the way.
Okay, thank you. Dwayne.
Yeah, just for school forum members, when Ross talked about the growth, I just want to contextualise it. Even with the growth being where we are in line now with national, regional and statistical. If we had continued the growth, we would have been completely off kilter. So, you know, whilst it might sound negative, it isn't actually. We just aligning now with the national trends where we are.
Okay, thank you. Nikki.
Hi, yeah, Ross, just to say from Schools Forum, thank you for the report. You know, for many years now, Schools Forum have asked for detailed SEN reports, and I think it was fantastic to have all that captured, and I think that's a really, really positive for Schools Forum. In point J from Schools Forum, I've been part of the top up I guess task force, as we put it, and so much work has gone into it. Both my schools are trials, and just to say to Schools Forum, you know, there's 2 different models that are currently going ahead at the moment, and actually both of them are really positive worker models. And I know Ross mentioned that the funding's a little bit less getting into schools, but actually the communication is happening quicker, so you're finding that you find out the amount you're getting, and I think from an early years perspective, and that's really helped us, because obviously it looks different for early years to schools block, and just to share that it is from the 0 to 25, and that really is a big change. You know, we've really, I think we've done a lot of work around that. So I think for all the people that have worked on it, Ross, I think a massive thank you from all of us from Schools Forum. And then just on point F, with the early years EHE plans coming low. Ross, can I ask if in that, because obviously sometimes as early years we'd submit plans quite early on, but it gets told to go back and we need more evidence, and is that process changing as well with that to try and get the plans coming forward?
Yeah, so Nikki, I'm leading that project at the moment. Sorry, Ross, if I come in here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what we're looking at are the pathways into early years, early help, and what that looks like. So for some of our children, it isn't questionable, and you shouldn't have assess plan do review because their needs are so significant that wraparound support should be put in from the earliest opportunity. And for me, Nikki, it has only been 18 months, and the work that we've done as a team has been, if I had to map it out for you all today, you would be amazed. So, we are conscious it's going to take time because this involves health colleagues, health visitors, school nurses, because the referral routes in. So we are putting them pathways in. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about children, our high 1%, those children that will, God forbid, will die in our care, or the needs are so complex it isn't questionable. So we are doing that. Yeah, there are other children where we absolutely need to do the assess plan do review because their needs will change and moderate over time. But again, can't do the one without the other. You needed the funding set up so that when we get the plans in early years, the funding goes in with our plan and it'll come from the high needs block. So, we are doing it, absolutely doing it. And we'll update this group as and when, the changes, but it should align with the funding. So we should get more funding into early years at an earlier time as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
So in terms of paragraph F, I mean, I think isn't it the case that the quality of early years provision varies significantly across the county? And how confident are you that some of the settings have got the skills necessary to get the evidence for an EHC plan?
Well, I'm not confident, Phil, if I'm honest. I would be lying if I actually said I was absolutely confident that the skills, knowledge and understanding is there. And I think that was something Ofsted have observed with our schools when they come in. That's not to say that the way we're working with our teams, because obviously I'm reviewing all the services, is for me, and I think the rugby trial has given this, is that peer-to-peer support. So what we are looking at is what can we absolutely give free of charge to our earlier settings, to our schools, through the workforce we got, so that we can build up that skill set and that knowledge and understanding. And again, Jane Carter's here today and all her services work that. But I'm there is a high turnover of staff in the early years sector. So, we're almost training people and then they leave. But it is a piece of work that as the services, Jane, myself, Ross, all of us would absolutely recognise that is there.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin Griffiths, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to support also what Nikki said about the top-up funding. As one of the schools that's trialling, the feedback has been extremely positive. And I think what they particularly welcomed is how it brings clarity to the whole process. I think that's one of the key things. It's not just about money, but it's also bringing clarity to what they're doing. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more comments or questions, please? Okay, thank you very much for your detailed report.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Look forward to seeing the updates as we go forward. Thank you. Right, item 9, pupil net funding in relation to pupils with medical needs, managed moves in year transfers, and this is you, Dwayne, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I'm sure Jane's here as well. And thank you, Jane, for all the work on this as well. So basically, I'm trying to get the report up. For some reason now my computer's crashed to the point I didn't want it to. So basically, this is looking at a few areas, but in primarily is funding following the pupil, and it's going to cover. This covers the sort of flexible learning, our medical needs. Provision. It's going to cover exclusions, which it does now, but we want to extend it really into managed moves, in new managed moves. So bear with me, I am trying to get up and for some reason it won't come up. One sec. Who's funding? So
I think we've all got access to it.
Have you all got access?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
that's good. So in terms of, so I think my understanding is in 2018, a report came to this schools forum around looking at how we fund children that are not in school. In other words, how the funding follows that child. Now, for school leaders and governors that are here, as you know, on the 6th day of a permanent exclusion, the local authority are responsible for educating the young person. And Jane's going to correct me now, but I think it is the 15th day of either cumulative or consecutive illness that a child's not in school, that responsibility falls to the local authority. So in 2018, a paper was done, and that paper requested that the pro rata of the OPU money, 100% was taken back by the local authority to fund that child's placement. I also believe that never happened. And over the last few years, we've only been funding children out of school in our medical needs or our tier 4 beds or through managed moves at 80% of the OPU. So in other words, funding that comes with that child into school has not been followed with that child. For example, top-up funding. If a child is into the medical needs, we haven't necessarily been getting that top-up funding from schools, and that should absolutely follow that child. So we've worked on a paper and looked at really and the funding formulas of what needs to follow the child and the indicators like deprivation factors, pupil premium. So if a child is out of school, then that funding will come and it will come into the local authority to ensure that that child's education is continued. So in terms of the paper, it is for reference. We should have been doing this many years ago. We've checked the funding regs, and the funding regs say the funding does absolutely have to follow the child. And therefore, what we're saying from September 2022, when a child is either accessing the medical needs policy, when the child is being permanently excluded, or when the child is on a managed move into schools, then what comes with that child will be recouped and passed on to the appropriate agencies. So I think that, the report is self-explanatory, and I'm happy to ask any questions. Just for colleagues here, if you haven't read the report, and Jane will back this up, 2 years ago, we have seen 100% increase in our medical needs. Okay, the way we go with children not being able to access school through high levels of anxiety and that. And I'm looking at you, and I got to be saying, it's also the in-use transfers as well between children. So what happens with in-use transfers? We've not been recouping that money when we send in children are transferring in year, and that's something we need to address. So the money does go to the school with the child. So happy to answer any questions, and I know colleagues from the service areas are here in terms of the specialism. So yeah, and I think this is really for information rather than a decision.
Thanks, Dwayne. I mean, in terms of you've just mentioned about children with anxiety, is that linked to what's happened in the last 2 years in terms of COVID and being out of school
Yes.
and home learning and all that kind of stuff that we're all very familiar with?
So I think yes and no. I mean, it'd be unfair to say that, we've seen a massive rise in it in the last 2 years. But when we've looked at, and Jane's looked at, and I see Jane nod, and I'll let you come in, Jane. Actually, when we look at the medical needs, then that pattern of behaviours were there. They were just not on the sheer volume of numbers now. Jane, I don't know if you want to break down the level of percentage of children with anxiety as opposed to other medical needs.
So previously, we were meeting the needs of children with leukemia, with having spinal rod surgery, those sorts of physical needs. Now we're tipping in, it's even more than 91%. We're tipping into 92% social, emotional, mental health needs. And predominantly it is autism with anxiety. But yes, when we ask for absent data going back, you can actually see that things had started prior to COVID. So COVID hasn't helped. And in particular, we've seen those children get younger. So it was very rare to see that in primary. We've got 22 primary children with us. That was very rare 2 or 3 years ago. So it's incredibly concerning. Just been on to our data dashboard today. We've actually got 220 active open cases. So this pattern does worry us, but we're investing resources in a new pathway around emotionally based school avoidance issues. So we're not just meeting the needs of those who are out at the moment. We're wanting to look at how we address the root causes and work with schools to put in those earlier interventions.
Okay, thank you. In summary of your paper here, Dwayne, would it be fair to say that we're bringing Warwickshire in line with what other authorities have been doing? Is that the case?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, Phil. It is. You know, other authorities have been recouping this money, and the funding regulations say that we must as well, just that we haven't done it. And I've looked back at it. I mean, I've only been yet barely 2 years, but you know, as I said, in 2018 a paper did come, and for some reason we didn't change or we haven't recouped. So yeah, I mean, it is in line with other authorities. Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. Rose Gunn, please.
Thank you. I think, yeah, Jane, you touched on something that was pertinent to us as well about the emotional based school avoidance. One of the difficulties I've experienced, and I think many other colleagues in schools might agree, I don't know, is trying to get other professionals involved. So you know, I try to refer to RISE. They say, oh, it's an autism thing. The child hasn't got a diagnosis, but is awaiting a neuro, and therefore they're saying they won't touch it. And so in our experience, I have a child who's been out of school for 15 months. Can't get him back in. And, you know, the recommendation of an EHCP, but I can't get him in the building to you know, or to engage with any professionals now. So it's a complex thing, anxiety. And it made more complex about how to get that support when it's really difficult to engage when there's some form of emotional based school avoidance. So yeah, there's a clear need, and you know, well, I'm talking a 6-year-old.
Do you want me to come back on that, Phil? Because
yes.
You know, as I said 2 years ago, when I first come here, you know, we got 30 odd projects in the change programme, and as we go through the journey, that would increase. And emotionally based school avoidance is absolutely one we need to invest in, but it is about that early intervention, early support model, because what's happening at the moment, we've got a reactive model, and it's not just about education colleagues, so it's about getting involved with our RISE colleagues as well and doing things in a different way. And part of the written statement of action in area 1, and I know Marie Rooney is leading on area 2 and 3 of the written statement of action is 3 and 4 is actually looking at what sort of are the pathways and how we can link that training in for schools as well, and how we bring in our other colleagues. But it is a significant issue. Absolutely.
Yes. I mean, our situation was made worse by COVID. I think there were signs before that, but made worse by it. But it's trying to get other professionals involved. You know, I'm being told we don't want to make it complicated. Well, I need somebody. Excuse me. And I need other people involved, because in theory that child has not attended school for 15 months now.
I can talk to you, Rose, offline about
that. Would be amazing, Jane. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
We are working very closely with Marina Kitchen and Stacey Gill to shore up our early help offer around this key issue, because what we've recognised is that needs to be our first port of call, really, because what we're finding is these issues tend to be you know, needs to be addressed across the family, because one of the things that we're experiencing in flexible learning is that we don't just get one child. If there's other members of the family, unfortunately we are getting siblings as well, because they see older children not going to school, and therefore are seeing, well, why should I go to school? And that's why we feel we're getting an increase in our primary requests for services. So
yeah, we definitely could in our consortium, could echo that we've seen that increase, in particular around SEMH, exactly as you said, Dwayne and Jane. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Griffiths, please.
Hi. Yeah, I understand the need for the funding, obviously, to follow the child, but just a thought. When a child, say, goes into hospital and the funding then follows them 100%, is the child then taken off role of the school where they're not getting any funding at all?
No, that's illegal to do that, to be honest with you. That's off rolling. So in terms of the policy, the medical needs policy, the responsibility of the child of statutory school age, let's be clear, this is about statutory school age, which is age 5 to 16. It remains with the school. And we will prorate. When I say 100%, we're not taking it, we are prorating from the time we take that child. One thing we have noticed as well, and Jane, you can come in on this if you don't mind, but when we look at tier 4 admissions, what we do know at tier 4, so under the mental health admissions, we have more children being admitted, and when they're admitted, they're staying for longer. Yeah, so it's kind of a perfect storm at the moment. But what we're not in position to do as local authority, because obviously we don't have the money either, is actually fund their education without actually taking the money from schools, because that's where the money, we devolve that money straight out through the schools block. So but it's not unique what we do, and it is standard practice. But Jill, I don't know if you want to come in on anything there.
Yes, absolutely. So we are charged as a local authority for the days that the child attends. So we robustly work with the tier 4 providers and insist on seeing evidence of the programme that the child is following while they're in hospital, and evidence of attendance as well. So we're only charged for what the young person is getting, and we focus very much on learning objectives, outcomes that the young person is working towards, and since we've become more proactive around that, we've actually seen much better outcomes. Children, young people going back into they are predominantly secondary aged, going back into their sixth form, their exam programme, and then able to re-engage with the exams that they're meant to be taking. And one parent got in touch with me very recently to give us really good feedback about how that had worked for his family. And the young woman concerned is now at university and doing really, really well. And we've not always had those positive outcomes for young people who've gone into tier 4 and then re-engaged with education afterwards. So I think what we've got is a much better system for following up, but we need to be able to afford to do it, and at the moment it is breaking the bank, and we don't have the resources to keep on doing this at the level that we are at the moment.
Can I add to Jane as well? And what we have done over the last 2 years is made our health colleagues more accountable. So if they are signing children off from school, if they are saying children are too ill to go to school, we are expecting them to have a medical oversight of that child, because you wouldn't sign that off and not have them from work indefinitely. So we've had some strange situations like that. We're definitely signing this child off, where we are bringing our health colleagues to and saying, okay, when are you going to review this child? What does it mean for this child? So I think we have seen a shift the last couple of years, Jane, haven't we?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Good discussion. Any more questions or comments, please? Martin.
Yeah, it's just a generic question. I don't quarrel at all with what's in the paper, but thinking about it, I presume that in a way, school budgets have been partly subsidised in the sense that they've not been forwarding the whole 100%, whereas in the new world they will. So are there going to be some implications for school budgets arising from that?
Yes, probably, because as I said, schools have not been contributing and now they're going to have to. Yeah, so it's been a perverse incentive really, because it's been far cheaper to do a referral into flex learning than perhaps it would have been to get early intervention in order to sort of get the education welfare officer involved. And I don't mean for prosecution, I mean for the engagement work. So yes, it's going to be, yes, and we will do comms around this, obviously, and write out to schools to explain what's going to happen. But again, you know, I can only reiterate this should have happened in 2018 and it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Thanks, officers, for your reports. Right, item 10 is forward plan. Steph, are you taking this?
I'll take that, Phil. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We have moved to 4 meetings in a year with the option to have 5th extraordinary meeting in November if required. And the next meeting is on 23rd of June, having 4 items for decision and 4 for information. Thank you, Phil.
Okay. Everybody happy with that forward plan?
Yep.
Martin, have you still got your hand up?
No, it should be done.
Previous item, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Item 11 is chair's business. This is just really about what we do, how we hold the next meeting on the 23rd of June, which will be the first meeting of the new cycle with the newly elected members. Now, I had said in the past that we were going to try and meet in person. There was some issue about getting a meeting room in Warwick. That is now possible. The advantage we see of meeting online really is that we get a better turnout of people if we meet online. We have in the past, in past years, when we've met in person, struggled to get a quorum sometimes. And certainly for people's time, particularly for the heads that are running schools, being able to take an hour and a half to have a meeting at your desk rather than having to drive to Warwick, have the meeting and then drive home again is a good use of, is a much better use of time to do it online. It seems to be working. I think I haven't heard any objections that people are struggling to access the online meetings, but I'm open to suggestions as to what we do in June. Does anybody have any hard feelings one way or the other? Okay, I'm going to recommend then that we meet online on the 23rd of June, as we've been doing for the rest of the year. If that's okay with everybody. All right then. It just needs then for me to thank everybody for attending this meeting this afternoon. Thank you to the officers for your reports and the way that you presented them. I appreciate how much work goes into those reports, but it does provide us with food for thought and discussion. For those of you, if there are people not standing again, thanks very much for the time that you've given to Schools Forum. And for the rest of you, if we get elected, I look forward to meeting you again on the 23rd of June.
Phil, could I just say something?
You can indeed.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, obviously, if you were interested in continuing to be a member of Schools Forum and continuing to chair, I'm sure there's many people that would be very supportive of that. But I just wanted to say, and the same to Nikki for being vice chair, but I just wanted to say to both of you, thank you very much for your chairmanship and vice chairwomanship for the past couple of years. It's been fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I think we both hope to be back.
Excellent news.
All right. So we'll see everybody in June then. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye from Paul.
Thanks. Bye.